the time has come, and they're showing planes, trains, and automobiles on YouTube, directed by the one and only John Hughes. I wanted to show, I know Steve Martin, John Candy, I don't know them, but I know, you feel like you know them, but I know that they're great in this, and it's wonderful. I don't know who this actor is right here. I'm going to show you. But it just kind of goes to show when you're making a movie how important it is, even the small, little, tiny roles. And they're like ad executives or whatever, and Steve Martin plays Neil Page, and he's about to meet, he's about to go on the streets of Chicago, and he's going to run into Del Griffin. Or Del Griffin. I have to look it up. I think it's Del Griffin, but regardless, that's Neil Page. Steve Martin's playing him. This is kind of like his buddy, his office buddy. He's about to tell him something really kind of cool, that he's never going to make the 6, meaning he's never going to make the 6 o'clock flight out of O'Hara, Chicago. I just want to show you kind of how he says it. And even though it's a small little role, I don't know the actor's name. I'll probably find out in just a minute, but even though it's a small little role, watch the importance and the comedy behind it, and it works. Here we go.
That's you.
Here he goes.
Oh, damn it, I left my gloves in Brian's office.
He's a small little, that's Steve Martin, he's the star. But I just want you, here, watch the elevator doors close and watch this.
Have a good holiday.
Here he goes.
It's in Chicago, John. You'll never make this city.
And so that just goes to show that even though you have a small little part in a movie, that really did work very well, because it cuts to here, you'll never make the 6. It just brings in the rhythm of the whole movie. I just wanted to say that. I'm going to get that actor's name. I'm going to go ahead and rewind it. I'm going to give you the information on that. His name is Lyman Ward. He was also in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So that's probably where I recognize him. Yeah, there he is. He plays Tom Bueller. So I'm assuming that that's probably Ferris's father. But I have to go back and really look at the script to see if it's another relative. I have to really look at it. But regardless, I'd have to get a touch. Or what I'd have to do is get a hold of the script of Ferris Bueller. But he is in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But this is actually Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. He plays a character named John, which he's actually, to be honest, he's uncredited. So he's not even credited in the movie. It's an uncredited role. But see, he said enough right now, and from what I've seen in the actual movie, and this is a big time movie, this is probably given him quite a bit of money. This role has probably bought him a house and cars and all kinds of stuff. Same with Ferris Bueller's role, where he played Tom Bueller in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But what I'm trying to say is that this little moment right here probably got him a start in acting. So it's a pretty interesting little thing. But he's uncredited, so he wasn't even given credit at all. But he only plays like in the very first segment. I think if you look at the time right here, he's only in 2 minutes and 36 seconds of the film. So really about 2 minutes right there is all you need in a movie to change your entire life. You just need about 2 minutes as an actor on screen, and it'll change your entire life. So I thought it was pretty cool. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and watch the rest, and I'll just do surprise, kind of cuts in. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is probably my top 3 comedies. My number 1 is Raised in Arizona with Nicolas Cage and Holly Hunter. That's my number 1 comedy. That's my favorite comedy, is Raised in Arizona. My second is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. So it made number 2, right underneath Raised in Arizona. So Raised in Arizona is first, and then Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. That's my second favorite. I'm trying to think what would third be. I'd have to think about my third comedy. I don't really know. I'd have to really look through all the comedies. But this is definitely probably almost like a tie place for first. But I would say Raised in Arizona is a little funnier, but not like a whole lot funnier, but just a tad bit funnier. But this has a lot of heart. It is a good movie. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it, and I want to show you this classic shot. John Hughes was like a great director. There he is talking there. He says a little line, you'll never make the 6, and then boom. And this just goes to show, like, look at the photography here, the cinematography. Everything's a postcard. Look at this. This is right here in Chicago. When I first saw the movie, I thought it was New York, but this is actually Chicago right here. It starts off. All right. And we're going to meet the one and only Del Griffith. We'll find out his name. and who John Candy plays, and John Candy has passed away, rest his soul. Steve Martin actually is a novelist, and he's a great banjo player. It's Del Griffith, so that meets Neil Page. That's Neil Page right there. He's the ad executive kind of person. I really don't know exactly his occupation in this, but he's trying to get home to Thanksgiving to see his wife and kids, and he runs across a character named Del Griffith, who helps him. Well, he aids him along the way in kind of a way. He helped. Well, he tries to be helped, but he turns to be more like annoyance. I actually wanted to do a remake of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles using Adam the Woo as Del Griffith. And I was going to play Steve Martin's role because a lot of people have compared me to Steve Martin. I had even like stage reviewers and people that have seen me live on stage. They've said that I'm very much like Steve Martin. So it'd be a great remake, although I am getting old. Let's see how old Steve Martin was when he made this. I'm saying maybe 40, 45. Anyway, I'm actually about to turn 50, and Steve Martin was turning 42. So he was 42 years old when he did this. I don't know about John Candy, but even if I did it when I was 52, I think I might could pull it off. I do a lot of jogging. I might could pull it off. But I would definitely, if I got the money and everything, I would send a message to Adam the Woo and say, Adam, I got the role for you. Adam the Woo, or whatever his name is, Adam Williams, whatever his name is. I'd say, Adam, I got the role for you. It's going to be a modern day version, a remake of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And you would try your best at memorizing the script for the one and only Del Griffith, John Candy's role. I think it'd be perfect for him. Even if he does lose the weight, I still think it'd be perfect for him. But I know Adam won't. But if he does, I think it'd be good. Even if he's slightly heavy set, I think it'd be perfect. I think Del Griffith would be absolutely perfect for Adam the Woo, and I would be great for Neil Page. Neil Page. It's like really 1980s music that has this beat in that goes dun dun, dun dun. So it's really getting the kind of the time. John Hughes was great with timing. He was probably one of the best directors when it came to comedic timing. Right here, we've got all the noise of the traffic in the city and all the stuff. You see Roy Rogers in the back right here, this advertisement. But you've got all this noise of Chicago just right, and underneath that you have that John Hughes, the beat going dun dun. Dun, 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 dun. You got to watch this moment. And he's about to run across Del Griffith, and I'm going to completely forgot. Kevin Bacon runs in. So Kevin Bacon's about to rip off Neil Page, or just Steve Martin. I'll just say Steve Martin. So Kevin Bacon is about to rip off Steve Martin's cab. You can see him right there. Right, see the black dude? Now right next to him, that's Kevin Bacon. He was big in the 1980s. So he's going to steal Steve Martin's cab, and he does. He gets away with it. This is a great little moment to show the greed of the world and how, just people can just be evil, But Kevin Bacon does this very well. Okay, we'll get to the next one. Show you kind of the sound of the Chicago and also, the sound of John Hughes music with the drums and everything. Get into the synthesizers and the bass. The dun 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 dun. You can see Kevin Bacon taking off running right here. There's another shot of Kevin Bacon, and it's surprisingly enough, in this particular still frame that I just made right here, Kevin Bacon, surprisingly enough, looks a lot like River Phoenix, which this would probably be a really good role for River if they did if they did Planes, Trains, Automobiles remake maybe the early 90s or something, but they didn't. It was too soon. But they'll do it again, and I'd love to be behind this. But anyway, you can see him running. He looks a lot like River Phoenix, but he's about to run and still his cab. You can see Steve Martin running full speed. Another thing funny about Steve Martin is he was like the funniest runner. When he would run, it was just physicality. Steve Martin was right there with Charlie Chaplin. But he's running here, and then he's going to get his cab ripped off, and then we'll meet Del Griffith in a minute because Kevin Bacon's going to get out of town sooner because he's quietly quicker. Just a little bit quicker. Times when Steve Martin, or we'll say Neil Page, is on the ground in the street, almost being hit by a taxi cab. It happens more than once in the movie. There's another time it happens, and there's a movement kind of thing. But in this time, he falls down, and then, of course, he loses some timing, and then Kevin Bacon steals his cab. And then he's about to meet the one and only. There it is. It says it. I'm going to get close to the screen right here. It actually says his name. Now, I haven't looked at this because I've only peeked at the script a few times online. So I have able to get a hold of this script because many scripts are public domain, including Taxi Driver by Paul Schrader. But this is actually John Hughes stuff. I'm just kind of throwing that in there, but you can find this script somehow. But look how Del spelled. I've always thought it was 2 L's. It's 1 L. D-E-L. And then there's O, which we don't know his middle name. O, and then Griffith, right here. Griffith. It's funny because I have a story about Griffith. There's an old coat store in Maine, right there in Guilford. I think the store is called Griffin's, but the character kind of has a spirit of Griffith. But anyway, look, it says CO right here. And looks like a complete address. So I'm trying to make this out, what this says. This is the detailed stuff. John Hughes was very detailed. He was a very, very good director. Very good director. Just also look at the shot here. Look how detailed this shot is. You got another luggage here, which is probably either Del Griffiths or someone that he knows, or someone that just put their luggage there. I'm assuming that's Del Griffiths' luggage there. You got all of this. Look at the shoe, little blue shoe here. All this detailed stuff. And look at all these stickers. Doesn't that kind of remind you of A.D.W.C? You know, like his wallet? But look at all these stickers right here. All these stickers along here. To me, if this was, you know, A.D.W.C's box right here, to me it seems like, you know, it makes sense, you know. I mean, he'd put stickers on it. Del Griffith did, you know. But anyway, this is some kind of address here. I don't know. It says shower curtain bind division or something like that. Shower curtain. So if this was found, it would be sent to his business, not to his home. There's a P.O. box because Del Griffith doesn't have a home. Anyway, it's a pretty interesting little thing. We're about to see Del Griffith. This is the first frame where we do see John Candy playing Del Griffith. He's right there. I'm pretty sure that is John Candy. It could be a stand-in, but I'm pretty sure that's John Candy. Steve Martin is actually arguing with the guy that originally got the cab, saying, I'll give you $10 for the cab. I'm desperately late to the airport. I have to get there. And the guy tells him, well, you know, he goes, okay, I'll give you 20. He goes, well, if you give me 20, how about 50? And he looks at him again. He goes, well, anybody that give me 50, probably give me 75. So he talks him up to give him $75 to get this cab so he can get to the airport. And guess who takes his cab? You guessed it. A.D.W.C. Martin looks up and calls the guy thief. And he goes, close, I'm an attorney. All right, look at this shot right here, Chicago. Totally looks like New York to me, but it's actually Chicago. Right there, he's taken off with the cab that Steve Martin or Neil Page paid $75 for. And guess who's in it? Well, Del Griffith. Not really A.D.W.C, I was just joking, but Del Griffith is actually in it. There's the famous scene where Neil Page says, hey, 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 that's my cab. And he goes running after the cab like he's really going to catch it. What's funny enough, though, you get the first shot of Del Griffith in his actual cab, which is played by John Candy. There is Steve Martin playing Neil Page running down the streets of Chicago. Could you imagine if we actually got funding for this? We'd have to zone a street in Chicago and run down the street of Chicago. If that's not power, nothing is. Try to learn this little kind of weird step that Steve Martin does in this. It's kind of like his knee kind of bends, it goes to the side. But he's like, he does his famous, you're messing with the wrong guy. You know, it's just the funniest little This is the very first shot that we get of Del Griffith's face. When you look at this mustache right here. And John Candy was not a skinny guy. He was a big guy, but the idea is not really to go for the weight on this. You know, I'd be happy casting A.D.W.C as Del Griffith, even if he did lose the weight. It's about the spirit of the guy that I'm looking for. It's not about his physical form. Just like there's the spirit of Neil Page. It's the spirit. It's the kind of guy that would talk your freaking ear off if you sat next to him on a plane. But he's also a guy that has factual information and knows everything about everything. And he does a lot of stuff, especially selling shower curtain rings. He's what you call a salesman. And we're going to see him kind of make a response here just a second. Boom. This is what is great about the one and only John Candy. That was just a split little move that was very believable in the surprise face that he uses over and over and over again in John Hughes' masterpiece, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. We'll get to the other stuff later. They were in New York. Okay, I just found out. Sorry about that. He says, $6, am I right, nut, that we're not landing in Chicago. Okay, I got it. So, okay, let me rewind. So the opening scenes is actually New York. Okay, I got that completely mixed up. I thought it was Chicago, and like, where else would they be going? Because they're trying to get to Chicago. Because it said O'Hara on the plane ticket. Okay, this is great. Okay, I'm so sorry. For some reason in my mind, it was Chicago that they were in, but they're actually in New York at the opening. So I need to go back and see. They don't show a lot of exteriors. They only show like the internal part of the city. So they're flying to Chicago, but he's saying because of weather, they're probably going to land short of Chicago. So it starts off in New York City. Now they're going to Chicago. Got it. All right. Sorry about that. Everyone that's going to be watching this vlog, I'm not going to change it because it was a mistake, but for some reason I thought it started off, I don't know why I would even think it started off in Chicago. Where else would they be going? Now I know. Now I know that they were going to Chicago, so I figured it out. They would start off in New York, and now they're headed to Chicago. All right, there's Ben Stein playing the Wichita Airport representative. He's about to give an announcement. They did not make it to Chicago. They had to land in Wichita, Kansas. So we were in New York City. Now we're in Wichita, Kansas, and they have to make their way as close as they can to Chicago so Neil Page can reunite with his family. And Del Griffith can talk to
Neil Page called home to tell his wife that he's stuck in Wichita, Kansas. And while he was doing that, Del Griffith called a nearby hotel that he had sold shower curtain rings to the management. So he's going to try to get him a room as long as he pays the cab fare. We're getting to the cab for a minute.
Del Griffith just told Neil Page that as long as he picks up the cab fare, then he'll help him get a room. And this is his reaction after seeing a guy laying next to a trash can in the middle of the airport. It's like, okay, sure. Yeah, that'll be fine. This is the cab. It's called Doobie's Taxioli, and they're playing a song, or the cab driver is playing a song by Balaam and the Angel, known as I'll Show You Something Special. That's what the cab looks like. We're going to see the inside. It's kind of littered with, I don't know, like different photos and pinups of women. And it's got a little antenna outside. It has a devil on the end of it, and that's the cab driver right there.
Very proud of his city.
They find the Braidwood Inn, and their cards get switched up, and then they individually take separate showers, and they end up in the same bed because there's only one room left in the motel or hotel or whatever. I guess it's an inn, so it's more of a motel, but they're stuck in the same bed, and of course we're going to get to the pillows later.
Kitty, you don't have to bite.
Me too.
He's trying to read. He's got a lighter. He's lighting a lighter and he's trying to read. Then there's a shot. It cuts to the house of his wife. She's laying in the bed by herself, watching some television show. Oh, she's watching Barefoot in the Park, which is a Neil Simon play, which turned into a movie with Goldie Hawn and Robert Redford, I think. Robert Redford's, was in it. Now he's cracking his neck. Del Griffith's popping his neck before clearing his sinuses here in a minute. Steve Martin, well, he's scratching. Well, Del Griffith is scratching himself and like a dog, and it cuts to the wife asleep now. And now Del Griffith is clearing his nasal passages, and Steve Martin is still laying on his side, trying to get some type of sleep. Is that what you do, kitty? Do you clear your nasal passages where you just try to bite?
So Neil Page has had enough.
Kitty, come on. Come on. He gets a hold. Okay. Okay. Come on. Okay, look. Just go over that way. Okay. Golly.
All right, so Neil Page has had enough. He turns the light on. He gets his pants back on. He decides that he's going to go out into the lobby and sleep. Now, this monologue is very important for the movie, and he kind of goes off on Del Griffith and basically, you know, eventually calls him a chatty Kathy doll or something of that nature. And, you know, that, you know, he just pulls the string and talks to himself, you know. You have to watch this monologue because it kind of, you know, he insults Del Griffith and calls him kind of like a fool in a way, which you're not really supposed to do. It's a sin to do that. And then Del Griffith responds with, you know, well, in a way he's like, I like me. My wife likes me, you know. I'm an easy target kind of thing, you know. He basically, his heart is on his sleeve at this point. And Neil Page just keeps chewing him out and then finally feels bad about what he did and then goes back to bed with him, which is kind of a weird kind of thing. And then they wake up in a minute. But this monologue is like really important. You have to see what happens. Del Griffith protects his own pride. You know, he calls him an ungrateful jackass. And this conversation goes between them, and they cut each other down pretty badly. And of course, Neil Page gets to the point where he really, you know, cuts him up. You know, almost calling him an overweight, talking him a idiot or something. You know, he goes off and off, and anyway, regardless, it goes on and on and on, and finally, like you said, you know, but I just wanted to show you this reaction right here, where this is kind of what John Candy looks like. He was such a sincere actor, you know. This would be a very difficult role, and you know, and the Wu may not be able to handle it. You know, he may not be able to. I'd like to see him in the audition, but it would be someone that can wear their emotions on their sleeve, you know, and it would be someone that could really pull it off well. And if they don't have their emotions there, and they're not that type of person that they really are in life, and they don't reveal who they really are, and they're not afraid to show their embarrassments, they wouldn't do well in the role. And his weight does work for him, and John Candy, it did work for him in this role. Anyway, this is a great little moment. Steve Martin's character, Neil Page, probably makes six figures, and this was back in, like, you know, the 1980s, so it is a big deal to make a lot of money back then. A lot of people did. There weren't a lot of millionaires like there are now. I think now there's, you know, like 500,000 millionaires or something. I don't really know exactly how many. There's only 770 billionaires, so there's less than 1,000 billionaires in our nation. But Neil Page does not like the fact that John Candy's character, known as Del Griffith, gets all these handouts. You know, he gets a free cab, he gets a free room. You know, he lives on the charitable hospitality of the world because Neil Page plays hardball. Neil Page pays full price, okay? And is a guy that works in New York City and lives in Chicago in a very expensive, probably $1 million home, you know. And this is a kind of a thing where, you know, he tells him, you know, you're pathetic, basically, you know. And doesn't it, you know, can't you tell that I was bored with your stories when I was reading The Vomit Bag, you know, on the airline, you know, when they were flying. So he basically tells him, you know, you're not just a chatty Kathy doll, but you're also boring, you know, and your stories have no point to them. You know, it'd be like if I went up to Adam the Woo and said, look, your show has no point. You're just driving around back roads looking at things that make no sense. Walt Disney World gets boring. You know how long it takes to get bored of Walt Disney World? 1 day. It takes 1 day. Then when you return the next day, you're like, I'm ready to go. you know. But there is a charitable aspect of life, and there's malls of people that will watch anything. At this point in the insulting, Neil Page tells him, you know, hey, honey, here's a guy named Del Griffith. He's got some amusing antidotes. Here's a gun, so afterwards you can blow your brains out, you know, that kind of thing. And this is where he gets upset, because now Neil Page not only insults him, but includes his wife in the insult, which is really low, because Del Griffith's wife has passed away. So it's a sad situation. It's a very sad situation, because Neil Page brings his wife. Now his wife isn't there, but he brings her in the conversation, saying, "Here, honey, here's a gun. You can blow your brains out." You know, after you listen to this guy's stories, which have no point at all. All right. So Steve Martin says, "I can tolerate any insurance seminar for days with a big smile on my face." He's basically saying, you know, that Del Griffith is so incredibly boring and just redundant and just talkative that he would rather go to, you know, an insurance seminar, you know, and just a big smile on his face. At the insurance seminar, I could listen to it with a big smile on my face. And everyone would ask me, they say, how did you get through that? And I would tell them, I had once subscribed to A.D.W.C. Really, what he says, what Neil Page says is, he goes, I know Del Griffith, you know, and they go, oh yeah, I know what you mean. The shower curtain ring salesman, you know. He really, it's a low blow. This is like a very low blow. Because Neil Page is comparing, you know, the worst, you know, most boring thing to Del Griffith, you know, which is like an insurance seminar or something. It's like, I know what you're talking about. The shower curtain ring salesman. You know, this guy's like the most boring, unentertaining. This is a great one. You know, how could you stand this insurance seminar? How could you stand it? And he goes, because I've been with A.D.W.C. I can take anything. Well, really what he's saying, he's like, you know, he's like, I've been with Del Griffith. I can take anything, that kind of thing. It's a great little moment. Look how I want to show you. Look how serious Steve Martin is. He took this role very serious. Look how serious his face is right here. That's a serious looking dude. I mean, he's really putting his heart out into it. They must have done a few takes for this. He looks pretty serious. You know, it'd be like hanging out with a chatty Cathy doll, and you know, I just pull the string back, and you know, in his way. But only no, you would actually pull the string out. So Steve Martin, or Neil Page, insults Del Griffith. And here we go. Look at the reaction of his insult. That's what he caused. He caused him to almost cry. So another thing, you know, when you're telling these stories, have a point. It makes it so much interesting for the listener. So Del Griffith's like, you want to take a stab at me? You want to hurt me? Yeah, go right ahead. I'm an easy target. You're right, I talk too much, but I also listen too much. And he finally gets to the point where he says, you know, I like me. My wife likes me. And then he goes off more and gives him kind of this, you know, this great rebuttal. And then they return back to bed and go to sleep. And eventually someone sticks his hand between someone's butt cheeks, and I think it's pillows. Neil Page returns back to bed with Del Griffith. And in the night, like a thief in the night, a thief comes in and robs the cash from them. Or most of it. I think we get the... which is... I don't know, you know who it is. It's back in Baby's arm. This is the first shot we get of Del Griffith's wife and the Cracker Jacks and the Chiclets and the Kent cigarettes. And then we're going to show some Cracker Jacks here that Del Griffith was sleeping in, some of his, his gluttony right here. So it's Tammy Wynette back in baby's arms, and you can see part of the well here and the Cracker Jacks, Del Griffith eating, in his sleep kind of thing, like eating like right next to his bed. This is basically what happens if you share a bed with another guy and he thinks that he's, your wife or whatever. So Del Griffith is snuggled up right next to Neil Page and is thinking that, that's his wife because they're married men, and you've got one hand around him, and then the other hand is between his butt cheeks. And eventually Neil Page will tell him, well, where's your other hand? And Del Griffith says, well, it's between two pillows. And then it's the famous line, those aren't pillows. At this point, we realize that these are two straight men and that this was an accident. And his hands are kind of flipping around because he realized it was very gross that they were, that he thought that it was his wife, and he was holding his hand, he was kissing his ear and all this stuff. So they start immediately talking about the Chicago, what are they called? The Chicago, I was gonna say the Bulls, or not the Bulls, the Bears. Yeah, they start talking about the Bears, Chicago Bears, and they're just kind of talking very manly. And there's, how about those Bears? They're basically telling each other that he's straight and he's straight. Nobody's homo. That they're both straight individuals, and because they both have wives. Now his wife is dead, but he still has a wife, and then of course his wife is waiting for him. So this was kind of a really kind of scary moment. John Hughes put this in a great comedy, like everyone's dying laughing at this moment. So this really worked well as a comedic little stunt that John Hughes did, trying to get out of Wichita, and the transportation is showing its possible favor and meaning that they might get out, and then of course Del Griffith tells him, well, if they told you that Wolverines would make great house pets, would you believe them? And so, it's really funny at this moment because he's having his, cereal, and he's smoking a cigarette, and he's trying to tell him that they're not getting home anytime soon. Basically tells him, well, if you get me on the train, we're square, because he's been paying for everything. He decides to pay for the meal. He opens his wallet and realizes that he was ripped off by the thief, which he thinks is Del Griffith. And he tells him, what damn well what, and they're about to get in an argument, and then Del Griffith has this great line that says, I've never stole anything in my life, which is something Adam that we would say. And then Neil basically accuses him, and then they realize that they've been ripped off, and then he goes, well, we must have been ripped off. And then he goes, do you think so? They're sitting in front of the Braidwood Inn. I just wanted to show this. He says, what we're dealing with is a small-time crook. In a minute, this whole hillbilly group pulls in to give him a ride. And the wife is this kind of like redneck wife, and the redneck husband is like... And anyway, she gets out of the car to help them with their luggage, and they offer, we can do it. They go, don't worry about anything. She looks, small, but she's tough as nails. When her baby came out sideways. She didn't grunt or nothing. It's really, that's Gus's son. Gus owns the hotel or motel. That's Gus's son, and he's kind of a redneck. He's about to spit here, and then we'll look at his wife. The guy just spit a few times more than what he needed to. The guy Owen, he's dipping. He makes this noise like, and they're kind of reacting to his hoarseness, or I guess you call it his disgusting behavior. And then he's about to tell his wife to get out of the truck to help them with their luggage. And that's when he says, well, when her baby came out sideways, and she didn't grunt or nothing. And they're just, they don't know what to think. But this is their ride to get to the next point. I'm gonna drive you to Wichita to catch a train. They grab their luggage. There's this conversation about how, only the farm animal only the farm animal train leaves Wichita. They'd have to go to Stubbville to get the people train. Anyway, he's like, get your lazy behind out. So he's yelling at his wife. His wife's got like 2 kids in the truck because, they're trying to have hospitality and everything. And this is when he has the line about, when our baby came out sideways and she didn't grunt or nothing. The official line is, she's short and skinny, but she's strong. Her first baby came out sideways. She didn't grunt or nothing. The actual official line is, Her first baby came out sideways, and she didn't scream or nothing. And that's the reaction. Huh. And Del Griffith says, well, she's a real trooper, but we got it. So they get the luggage themselves to be gentlemen. They're not going to make the short, skinny lady grab their luggage for them. He tried to outdo him a little bit. There's some Christian hospitality in the movie, you know, because he's making his own wife load their luggage, you know, which is kind of horrible. But yeah, she didn't scream or nothing. Anyway, they get the luggage and put it in the back of the trunk, or the back of the truck, and then there's a dog back there, and it just goes on and on. I'm gonna take a little break from it because I can't do the whole movie, but just to get to this point, it's just hard for me not to vlog this movie. So they went through hell or high water to get to this point. They're 100 miles outside of Chicago, and Steve Martin finally was able to sell an expensive watch with $17. He tried to buy it with burnt credit cards, but it didn't work. Del Griffith tries to get his own room, but he only has $2 and a Casio, so he has to sleep outside. Eventually, you know, Steve Martin feels bad and lets him in because Del Griffith has a conversation with his wife, who is already passed away. We don't know this until later, but it begins to snow, and then eventually Neil Page invites him in, and they drink rum together and tell jokes, and then they're back on the road for the last leg of the adventure. Neil Page invites him in, and they raid the bar and eat chips and Doritos and drink a bunch of rum. One of the great moments of the movie is he says, well, at least you have a woman that you can grow old with. And you get kind of a hint that Del Griffith, it's just Neil Page, but he's talking about his wife. Del Griffith kind of gives a hint that he hasn't seen his wife in a long time because his wife is dead and passed away. Del Griffith is actually a homeless man that sells shower curtain rings. He learns this a little bit later. But he tells them, one thing is great, that at least we have, a woman to grow old with, you know. Some do, and some don't. At this point in the movie, they finally learn peace, to get along and be friends, which is kind of what the movie's about. And they talk about wives and summer camp and all kinds of stuff. And he's about to turn that light off, and that light's going to shock him. It's a funny movie. It's about friendship and two different opposing forces coming together for a common goal, to return home, or at least to return to the feeling of home. Snow came in the night before it snowed, so Del Griffith hops in the car and tries to reverse it to get out of the snow, which is a mistake, and runs into the motel room, destroying the wall. And Steve Martin's kind of the lookout right here. He's about to jump in the car, and they're going to make a run for it. And they got 100 miles left to Chicago. Okay, so they're singing a song. It's an old folk song, and the car is barely holding together. And pretty soon they're going to get pulled over by the law. And the police officer asks them, do you think this car is fit for travel? And and Del Griffith looks, the officer in the eye and says, I do think it's fit for travel. And, and he says, well, it may be beat up, Regardless, they do make it to Chicago. They sing the whole way. Basically their vehicle from the point of view of a motorist. And you can see the car is no longer, it doesn't have a ceiling. It's convertible. It's not fit for travel, but they're still, trying to get there. At this point, they're trying to keep sane, and they're singing some song about Kentucky, and they're just about to get pulled over in just a minute. Talk a lot about Better Call Saul, and I'm writing a sequel to Skinny Pete and Friends, and Michael McKean is actually in Better Call Saul, but here he's much younger, and he played Lenny in Laverne and Shirley. Squiggy was the other guy. He was Lenny. So he's a state trooper. He pulls him over, and they go through this whole entire, maniacal laughing kind of. They're not laughing at this point, but the audience is. What I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to say is that they go over this conversation about the fact that the car does not need to be on the road, and it's very funny, is what I mean. It brings up a lot of laughter, and that's Michael McKean. He does a great job as a state trooper. Later, he would play in Better Call Saul as Charles McGill. That's in CM. Charles McGill is later. He plays the OCD guy that's afraid of electricity. So Del Griffith tries to reason with the law, and you can't reason with the law. You can only fight law with law. There's no reason in reasoning with law. Okay, anyway. Their car gets towed, and now they're stuck yet again, probably about 60, maybe 50 miles out of Chicago, I'm assuming. And this is the courthouse that they're at. Well, it's like the city hall, probably. They're about to hop a 16-wheeler to get them there. It's like a freight wheeler or a freight 16-wheeler. I think it's full of some kind of refrigeration or something. I don't know for sure, but you can kind of look at them now. They look like they're more like in a Woody Guthrie scene, or like an old hobo movie or something. The road is beating them up quite a bit, but they're still trucking to Chicago. Driver's kind of freaky about letting people sit in the cab, so it's basically like a milk truck. It's refrigerated, so they're gonna hike the last 50 miles to Chicago and Thanksgiving. He'll eventually introduce him to his wife. And there's a shot of Chicago. Started off in New York, and now they finally made it to Chicago in the milk truck, or it's really a 16-wheeler coolant truck, whatever. But that's the truck right there that's pulling up to Chicago. V shot, and they're basically saying, hey, next time let's go first class, and they're kind of laughing. And he's about to separate, and he's going to go, Neil Page is going to go see his wife, and he figures he's going to go wherever he goes in Chicago. When he gets on the train, he realizes from listening kind of to the memories of Del Griffith's voice that he's actually on his own, and he doesn't have a home. He has a home, and he doesn't. So he returns and takes him with him. It's kind of a fantasy ending, because that would never really happen, but it is a Christian thing to do. So John Hughes is showing kind of a Christian nature in the action of the characters, rather than being directly theologically evangelical and using scripture words and stuff like that. He shows behavior, and in their behavior, he takes him with him to meet his wife, and that's a very Christian thing to do. So that's kind of the ending, and we'll get to that in a minute. Also, if you look at it this way, in the Christian church, we are the bride of Christ. So we are always waiting to not only be the bride, but to be reunited with our spouse, which would be Jesus Christ, because he is the ruler of the kingdom and our husband of the Christian church, if you look at the actual theologically of it, or the theological aspect of it, or what am I trying to say? Theological, the theology of it. The theology of it is that we are all the wives of a husband named Jesus Christ. So we're waiting to return as a bride. It also refers to that in Songs of Solomon. If you read Songs of Solomon, we were waiting to return to our husband. So he will take his friend to meet his wife to show the marriage. It's a very Christian ending, and we'll show the ending in this moment. He knows he probably won't see him again, so he hugs his friend goodbye, which later he'll come back and bring him to meet his wife. Steve Martin goes through his memories and kind of, in a way, pictures returning back to his family, and then Del Griffith's memory returns, and he begins running on the platform, where he returns back to the station because he keeps hearing the voice, I haven't seen my wife in years. I haven't seen my wife in, I think he said years or something like that. He realizes that he's on his own, so he's going to find him at the subway station. There he is, Del Griffith, by himself. He was right. He's on his own. He's a homeless guy. But he's a clever homeless guy, because he looks like a man that would have his own home. But he's actually homeless, and he has no wife. When in acting school a long time ago, Bob Lavelle taught us. He was a teacher of acting that worked under James Lipton. He taught us that your body is your home. People place great value on their houses and thinking that that's their body. Your house is not your body. Your home is your body. Your body is your home, because that's what you live in. And not a lot of people understand that. But, and Neil Page would never understand that. He sees his home as his home, because he will grow old. Neil Page will grow old, and so will his wife, and the kids will move out, and one of them will die first, either the wife or the husband. And one day his eyes will awaken, and he'll realize that his home is his body, and his body is his home. In this case, Del Griffith reveals that, because he has no home. Wherever he is his home. And that's what Bob Lavelle was trying to teach us, that wherever you are, that is your home. Your home is your body. It is not a structure that you live in like a house. It is what you carry around with you. Anyway, so he picks him up here and takes him back to his house and to meet part of his home, which is his wife, because the man and the husband are treated as one flesh. Thus, together, they are a home. And he'll bring him to meet the wife. So Neil Page hears the news from Del Griffith that Marie, Del Griffith's wife, has been dead for 8 years. And this hits him hard. And he realizes what he has to do. He has to take this man who has no home and has a broken body, because he's very obese. He has to take him to meet his one and only wife, which is an extension of his own body, and an extension and what makes his home. So there they are carrying Del Griffith's case and the song, "Every time you go away, you take a piece of me with you," which is playing right now. So he's going to walk the case back, or I guess that's, Del Griffith's case, to meet his wife. It's a great little moment in the movie. I'm going to end it here with this shot here. I'm not showing the bride, of course, but that's where they're headed to. They're headed to meet the beloved. We'll probably vlog it again some other time. I'd like to find out who sang the final song on that one, but anyway, I'll find out a little bit later, because I want to watch the credits. Y'all have a good night.